Okay, so you should now open the document. If you're listening, clap once again. Okay. You should now have opened the document that's called Rereading and Finding Depth. And I want you to say at the very top where we have this chart. Don't look at the pictures yet. Don't look at them. Okay, if you can see the pictures, turn it sideways so you can. Okay. So I'm going to have you guys be looking at this chart. So before we do that, flip your iPads closed, not closed, but just flat, so I can have your attention here. How many of you guys have ever watched a movie maybe the second or third or fifth or 10th time and then went, I never noticed they said that there? Or you laughed at a part that you never knew that was in the movie, or you just kind of never really picked out before? Raise your hand if that's happened to you before.
Can it also happen with a book?
A book would be the same too. It could happen with a book. It could happen with a song. Sometimes it even happens with a piece of writing. What do you know, like poetry, okay? So we're going to start off today talking about this in something that is an image.
We read the poem various times, so we didn't notice it was...
Yeah, so yesterday, even with the poem that we read, The Lost Generation.
So it happened to all of you guys.
It happened to you guys. Almost everybody in all of my classes read it the first way through, and if I hadn't stopped and pointed it out right after that, people would have been reading.
No, it says both.
And reading.
Reverse it.
And reading. And reading. But some people would be like, yeah, they just mean like we must reverse our lifestyle. Sometimes it takes people 3 or 4 or 10 times to realize, hey, they literally mean reversing. Right? So, the idea here is today we're going to practice with what happens when you read or look at a piece of writing or an image or even a song or a movie type of situation. If you look at it more than once, twice, what happens to your responses? Okay? So we're going to practice with a variety of viewings. So I'm going to give you guys some time in a minute, but not yet, to write on this chart. After I tell you, you have 30 seconds to look at this image. Boom. And I will give you time to look at it. And it asks you to write out what you notice in the image, what you wonder about, what you're thinking, what kind of things you're connecting. So it could be what you just noticed here. It could be what you're wondering about, or it could be something that you're putting together in your head. And then I'm going to say, stop looking at that image. Write everything that you remember up here. You're not going to write up here while you're looking, only after you're done. And we're going to do it several times. And we're going to see what happens to our responses as we do this. Okay? So, before you do that, you should not be looking at your iPad yet. There are 3 different pictures you're going to have the opportunity to look at. And you're going to pick really fast right now because I don't want you to have time to look at them first. So, be picking in your head which of these 3 you want. Do you want colorful man? Black and white man? House? Raise your hand if you want colorful man. Okay. Raise your hand if you want black and white man. Raise your hand if you want house. Okay, it doesn't matter to me. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or so to only look and think about what you're noticing, what you're wondering, what you're connecting. So we got to look at this picture. Get yourself ready. Scroll down to that picture. Ready, set, begin. So you should be stopped now, and you should be going up to your chart. I'm going to give you a little bit of time. What did you notice? What did you wonder? What kind of things did you connect? Only in your first viewing, right in there.
Connect with you with that.
Maybe sometimes you think, oh, this is like this thing. Or maybe you wonder something that brings you to a new thing.
I don't know.
Okay, find a place to stop on your note-taking. Find a place to stop. We're going to look at our second viewing. So get ready. I'm going to give you about 30 or 40 seconds maximum to look at it. Find a place to stop on your notes. Just find a place to stop quickly. You can continue them in a minute. Look down at your image. Go.
The same image?
The same image. Same image, same image. What are you noticing this time? What are you wondering? What are you connecting? Stop. So from that same image, what did you notice the second time you looked at it? What did you wonder about or notice that you want to make connections about later maybe? Put all your notes in here. I'm just going to give you about 30 or 40 seconds to do that. What did you notice? What did you wonder? What did you make a connection about the second time you viewed it? All right, we're going to do our third viewing. As I said, don't be afraid. I'm going to wait for you guys again. Don't be afraid to think outside the picture. I'm asking you what you notice, but also what you're wondering, or what kind of connections you can make. Okay? So we're going to look at our third time. I'm going to give you about 30 or 40 seconds to look. Go back to the same exact picture you've been working on. Go. Okay, let's stop there. Let's stop there. It's time now to go for your third viewing. What did you notice? What did you make connections with? What did you wonder about? I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to fill that in. So now that we've looked at this a variety of times, you filled in after we viewed each time. How many of you guys noticed sometime after the first time, anything at all that you were like, oh? Raise your hand if that happened to you. Okay, look around. Almost everybody in here. If you're listening, clap once. If you're listening, clap twice. If you can see my chin, clap once. Alex. Yeah. So, when you do this, it's kind of like that thing I was talking about at the beginning, a book or a movie or something you've seen 10 times, and then you realize, oh, I never noticed that before. So, what I want you guys to do is think about what the lesson is in this. What's the lesson in this?
Sometimes you gotta think out of the box.
Sometimes you have to think out of the box. What else?
You read again?
Review your work and see and if you can add or take things.
Review and see what you can add.
You need to read again.
Read again, look again.
To truly understand something, you gotta be specific and look in.
Yeah, you gotta look in, and you gotta do that usually a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth time even sometimes, because you miss it the first time, you miss it the second time. So I want to think about something a little bit related to your responses here that you might have already seen on this page. So you don't need to, well, go ahead and scroll down. So past the pictures, it says continuum of constructing meaning. And I also have a printed version I'm going to give you in just a minute so you don't have to click back and forth when we do this next step. But before we do that next step, let me explain to you what this means. So this is a continuum, and it's not a score guide right now. Basically all it is it's telling us different levels of our responses or understanding. So we look at this one, it says a knowledge base. This one's example or information in it says the surface level responses. Maybe we notice superficial observations. Maybe we're just picking out what we see. So if I look at, for instance, Sebastian, I might say, oh, I know Sebastian. I know him really, really well. He's got brown hair, brown eyes. He also, yeah, he has some sandals too. He's also got glasses. Is that really, really knowing him though?
No.
No. I didn't even talk about other things I noticed on him that might be more related to who he is. It might be like where he's from, or something on his shirt that says a team that he's interested in maybe, okay? Or maybe what he has near him that tells me what his interests are. Those are very superficial things. And that's kind of what most of us notice in the very beginning. We notice superficial things, or maybe it's something I do notice, but maybe I'm not digging into it because later, when I look at it the third or fourth or fifth time, I notice something I can grab onto and help me build through another part. So that's the beginning. That's this knowledge base. The second one, number 2, says comprehension. Maybe I'm starting to notice things that shifted or changed. Or, hey, I saw this part here, but it's different over here. Ooh, that's weird. And I'm starting to ask myself why, or just notice that there are differences and see if I can start figuring out these are differences. What are maybe patterns or categories of these differences? And that might bring me into my third column. This is where it says I'm starting to analyze or put some application in. Maybe I notice different themes or theme patterns. Okay? Oh, this picture has a lot of music signs in it. It must be related to something. Oh, I'm starting to notice it has this and this and this, and those are all about war. Oh, these are all weapons. Okay, so maybe we're starting to notice a pattern about certain things. Or maybe I'm starting to notice a certain mood, or that this symbolizes something else, represents that people don't even get to these yet because they never thought, they didn't even know how to get there. Raise your hand if this has happened to you before. Somebody says, respond to this thing, whether it's a picture or a text, and you're like this. I don't even know what to talk about. I don't even know where to respond. I don't have anything to say because I don't even know what I could say. Raise your hand if you've caught yourself in that position before. And that's totally normal. So part of what this continuum is to tell us maybe where we are in our beginning steps, and if we are getting to some deeper things. But if we're not getting to some deeper things, or we notice we hadn't, these are some deeper things that we can get to. On your chart, look at column 4 and 5. What are some things that are a little bit deeper and harder that maybe you didn't get to, or maybe people could get to if they're starting to think, what else can I go to? What else can I say? I heard some of you asking me that. What connections can I make? What things I can talk about? What things can I talk about? And I was like, I don't want to tell you that. So what are things you could say or talk about when you finished noticing all these?
Cultural connections.
Cultural connections, okay?
Religious connections.
Religious connections. So if I'm doing this about a person in my class, instead of just noticing what they look like or what they always bring, I might start going, oh, you're from this country. Ah, in your country, this is how you celebrate birthdays. New Year? Oh, and I might start wondering, oh, that's why he thinks this. Oh, that's why he spells this way. He used to live in this other country
Like
where they spell it.
Australia,
So I can start not just saying like, oh, he has an accent, but I can start noticing with a person social connections, cultural connections, how you act, how it helps. But in a text, you might have to look at the author or the artist if it's an image. Or you might have to look at what this says about a place. Think about our poem from yesterday, The Lost World. Does it say some things that are negative about our society? Yeah. So we might be starting to think social connections about how the society operates. Maybe we're too focused on money and materials per the poem. So I might start thinking about how these things are in the poem or in the picture or in the song or in the movie. I also might think about why that person chose to put that there. Think about the image you're looking at right now. The image that you were looking at was an optical illusion of sorts, right? Or an art with a lot of pieces that are hidden in it. How many of you guys have seen these on Facebook or Instagram or something? It's a picture, it's like Find the Panda. You guys have seen those?
Yeah.
Or Where's Waldo, right?
Yes.
If they wanted us to be just searching for things, couldn't they have done a Where's Waldo or Find the Panda?
They come.
They could have. But they didn't. They did. Can I use your crap? They did something like this where you're not looking for one specific thing, but the more you look, the more you find, right?
Like the windmill.
Right. You start noticing. So if it was really about just like tricking my eyes, how come they did it this way? Why didn't they do it this way? Questions you might start asking yourself as a reader or a viewer.
Is he a teacher? Because it's a hint, not tell.
That's right. Is he a teacher? What's he supposed to be teaching? Or am I supposed to be learning? Ooh, what am I supposed to be learning? What am I supposed to be noticing? So I think the idea is that you go from noticing details that you might pick up instantly to figuring out patterns and connections, to thinking about how those affect the author, the viewer, the reader, the society, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, or stronger and stronger. And the chances of noticing these things right off the bat, where are those chances? How are they?
Very little.
Very little. Okay? It takes us a while to get past this. You can only notice these when you notice these. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to ask you to score yourself. Go up to where you had your responses. So you're going to go up to these responses that you had. I'm going to ask you to look at your first viewing, and then, Nico, would you pass these out for us?
What does it have the black and white in?
What does it have in it? I'll tell you after class. Okay, scroll up to your chart like this. So look at your chart here. I'm going to ask you to score your first viewing. Looking at the continuum that we just looked at, would you give yourself a 1 or a 2 or a 3? If you want to give yourself a half, 1.5, 2.5, that's okay. I'm going to wait. If you're listening, clap twice. If you're listening to this. Okay. Then I'm going to have you score your second viewing. Your third. I'm going to have you score all of your responses. But when you do it, you're not going to be like, oh, this one's good, it's a blank. You're going to actually have to say, okay, what did I write? I wrote blah, 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 blah. Well, that looks like all of those are superficial observations. Or that looks like all of those are a pattern. I just wrote them all, and then I kind of made a connection. Okay, so then maybe I can say I'm a 3. Your job is to not just look, it's to be able to identify why you give yourself a 1. Why did you give yourself a 2? Why did you give yourself a 4 or whatever? You should be able to say, this part right here, this is the 4. This part right here, this is the 3. Okay? So I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes to look at these and figure out how your responses were on that continuum, on that knowledge depth piece. Were they knowledge? Were they things that were analysis? Were they deep? And that's okay if they're not, because I didn't tell you any of this before that. All right, so this is the time. 2 minutes on the clock. Score yourself. If you finish, please sit quietly and wait for everybody else.
But what do I score myself?
Yes, because you were absent. Give me 1 second. Let me make that clear again. You're not writing on this paper. This is only so that you don't have to click back and forth. You're writing your score on here, right next to your chart, okay? This is just so you can look at your answers and look at the continuum side by side.
1 score for each.
1 score for each of your viewings. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, here's what we're going to do now. You have given yourself a score. Your score. Maybe you gave yourself a 1, maybe you gave yourself a 2, maybe this one's a 2.5. What I'm going to ask you to do now is verbalize that to your neighbor. So if you're at a table with 4 people, divide into 2s. If you're at a table with 3, only that table back there, you guys will have to do a circle, okay? And you're going to have to explain. And that means you can't be like, well, I think I talked about observations, and so I gave myself a 1. You're going to have to say, I made some superficial observations, such as blank and blank and blank. And I thought that those were just basically what was on the page, and it wasn't anything that was a shift in the structure. So I gave myself a 1. So you're going to do that for each of these. Divide into 2s at your tables with your partner. Begin. Okay, if you're listening to this. Listen to this. Okay. So when we did this, we didn't actually get down to the bottom. We have some at the bottom where we have some space, right? Okay, because we didn't do all 5. So what I'd like for us to do now is, as I'm looking, and this happens pretty much every hour, I notice that a lot of people say, not everybody, but most people say, Miss, I got a lot of these. I didn't really get any of these. Okay? And I'm noticing that when I go to the groups. And that's okay, because maybe, as I said earlier, you didn't even know what kinds of things you could possibly be thinking about. Now you know. So I'm going to ask you to look at number 4 and number 5. And I'm going to ask you, now that you've looked at this picture before, and now that you've looked at this chart before, to try to see if you can think of something in one of these 2 categories that builds off of what you said earlier and make a response about that now that you're looking at it with different eyes. You're looking at it with more informed eyes and more informed ways of thinking. So I'm going to ask you to look at these and see if there's something that you could make a response with as you look at it again. And go ahead and write it in one of the parts at the bottom.
It wasn't really response.
So I'm going to ask you to look at this and then go ahead and do like another viewing. Look at that page again. Could you find anything in category 4 or 5 that you could be looking for in that image? Is there something about a cultural or religious connection? Is there something about the author's purpose that you could specifically look at this image and try to think about what you see in there or what you notice? Okay? So I'm going to ask you to look at that. And after you've thought about what you'd like to respond to or what you notice from there, now that you're informed, to go ahead and write it toward the bottom of the viewing, because we didn't fill out the whole chart of our viewings, right? What do you notice? And try to give yourself a 4 or a 5. And score yourself. Did you get a 4? Did you get a 5? And they're okay. Both are fine.
How we change?
You can add on to something that you had earlier, just copy it and paste it here and develop it more. Is that what
Can
you
we
mean?
change of picture?
No, I don't want you to change the picture right now. Because you would be starting all over with a brand new one that you haven't looked at 4 times already.
But no, I know, is that...
Okay, so the next part of this looks like what we're going to finish on next class or Friday. So if you scroll to the very bottom, you're going to see this poem in red, and you don't have to do that right now. You can kind of just look at it from up here. We're going to be doing the same activity that we did, thinking about how we can make our responses deeper and stronger, and we're going to be doing it with a poet, okay? Because we're in the poetry unit now. So we have the same idea that we're going to be working on, but with a different piece, instead of an art piece and text piece for Friday.